Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Brass Junkies. I am your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by my inspired host, Lance LaDuke. Lance, how are you?
I feel inspired.
Why?
Because I just got to speak not only with Craig Knox, but with you. Did you ever know that you're my hero? You're everything I would like to be. I could fly higher than an eagle. You are the wind between my wings.
I loathe that song.
Did you notice I said between instead of beneath?
I didn't notice that. There you go. Yeah, between my wings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there you go. That's yay. Thanks, man. Thanks.
Thank you. No, thank you.
As soon as we're done here, I'm gonna have to go cleanse my musical palette. That's gonna be stuck in my head all day long, and then I'm gonna be mad. But you know, it doesn't.
It's a world of laughter, a world of tears. It's a world of hopes and a world of fears. Is that better?
Sure.
How about come and knock on our door?
Do you know any Fish lyrics?
Yeah, there's that one that goes meedly, 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 meedly.
Have you
for about 45 minutes?
You've seen the video of what fish sounds like to normal people. Have you seen that?
I think I did. I think you sent it to me.
Okay, I think so too, because it's really funny. Yeah. In fact, put it in the show notes because I will send you the link because it is it starts out pretty funny, but then about a minute in, it gets like, yeah, you can love fish, hate fish, never have heard fish. You're going to laugh hysterically. So yeah, there's someone is really creative and has a lot of time on their hands. So that's all that I will say. So, boy, what a conversation.
Fish shreds it, that one?
Yes, that's it. That's it. Yep. Fish shreds it. I'm going to watch that as soon as we get done here, and they're going to be tears streaming down my face. So yeah, that's really good stuff. What a conversation with Craig Knox.
Oh, really great. Well, and kind of serious, kind of. It didn't start that way, but then we got there. So
yep, we did. Yeah, it was and
coming out with these content heavy episodes. I don't know what to do with them.
Yeah, you know what we just need to like get Pat Sheridan back on the podcast or something like that. That'll take care of that. So we could always reprise the sexiest euphonium player in West Virginia too. Good point. Have him back. Although his went content too.
I know.
All these people are worried about their legacies or something. I don't know. Yeah,
gotta get Gould.
Yeah, well, there's. I think my favorite part of that interview was when you were talking about the guy who wanted him to come and talk about playing trumpet in an opera. He's like, "Why?"
He's like, call me.
Actually, I just remembered I'm booked for 2019. The whole year. So, all right, we need to thank Parker Mouthpieces for providing the hosting for the Brass Junkies. Parker Mouthpieces offers customizable component mouthpieces, which are fine for horn, trombone, euphonium, tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model Tuba mouthpiece and the Lance LaDuke Model Euphonium mouthpiece.
Sweet!
You can find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
And people should email Parker.
Yes.
Asking if he makes double bell euphonium mouthpieces.
Yeah.
And if so, what the 2 cup sizes are.
I just had a flashback to I was on the Break the Business podcast as a guest recently. That just came out, and I think it was that one. I did 2 of them. I also did the Working Musician podcast, but anyway, I think it was Break the Business, which is a really good podcast.
Not a lot of people know that this show was originally going to be called Break the Wind, but we decided not to do that one.
But I was talking about Pedal Note Media and talking about you, and I said that you were that you're like a world-renowned euphonium player, that you're one of the best euphonium players in the world. And then I said, yes, that is actually a thing. It doesn't sound like it, which cracked me up. So And it did crack the host up too, which was good. So I think that was actually the Working Musician podcast interview. So because he asked me about Penelope Media and how that came to be a thing and all that. So anyway, so there you go, man. That's a thing. See, I said a nice thing about you and then I disparaged you.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I like to build my friends up just so I can knock them down. So how about the Papper people?
Love will lift us up where we belong. Hey, Papper people. So the Duquesne University School of Music, a.k.a. the Mary Pappert School of Music in beautiful and sunny Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, is a sponsor of this show, and we couldn't be happier. More specifically, the Brass area sponsors this show, and we thank them and the fine gentleman responsible for that. That would be Jim,
where the Eagles
Nova.
fly.
Where the Eagles fly. That's right. Jim, where the Eagles fly, Nova.
Up on a mountain high.
Mm-hmm. And if you're interested in finding out about the fantastic program in the Brass area at the Mary Pappert School of Music, please click on the link below. You'll be taken to a special page dedicated to the Brass area, and you can see the performance opportunities and the applied faculty. So thanks to Jim, Eagle, what is it?
Where the Eagles fly.
Jim, where the Eagles fly, Nova.
Time goes by, no time to cry. This is I've hosted a lot of podcast episodes between the two at this point, and this is the first time that I have Googled Joe Cocker lyrics while recording.
Because you usually just have it up automatically.
Yeah, I got to admit, it was I just had to open the tab. So, but that's it. So, yeah, well, there you go. So Joe Cocker has hijacked the Craig Knox episode of the Brass Junkies. So that was more if Tom Waits, who's one of my musical heroes, was horrible, then that was kind of, and well, yeah, I'm going to stop there.
Joe Cocker and a kidney stone.
Oh my goodness.
There
are a number of people who just found that as funny as I did, and a number of people who did not. So yeah, we love you all. So the Patreon, if you don't want to hear more stuff like that impersonation of Joe Cocker, then you should be very pissed at these people who financially support the podcast.
That's right.
They went to patreon.com/thebrassjunkies, and we are now up over $100 an episode. Our next goal is $125 an episode, which we just like catapulted past 100. We don't even have a reward yet for 125, do we?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so. Yeah, we got to put our noggins together there. So
Joe Cocker cover album.
So thank you to all of you. We record a bonus episode with every guest, which is available to all patrons. And then we also have some other bonus content, which is available for anyone at the $3 per episode or more pledge. But you can get a ton of bonus episodes that are back recorded. You get access to all of them the second you become a patron for as little as $26 a year. Gets you all of that stuff. So, and this one with Craig was really good. So,
great one, yeah.
Yep, some good Sam stories in there, and Sam Palafian stories, and it was good.
Yeah, man.
And lastly, thank you to everybody who's gone to iTunes and left a rating and a review. That is probably the easiest way. That and subscribing are the easiest concrete ways that you can help the podcast. So, am I forgetting anything, Lance?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think that's going to do it for this intro. And so without further ado, let's get to our conversation with Craig Knox of the Pittsburgh Symphony. On the Brass Junkies, we are joined by someone who at least claims to be one of Lance's friends. That might just be to keep things, not professionally awkward in Pittsburgh. But this is one hell of an orchestral tuba player, and his name is Craig Knox of the Pittsburgh Symphony. Craig, how are you today?
Hi, guys. I'm good.
He had his name officially changed to Craig Knox of the Pittsburgh Symphony.
That's how what people call me.
It continues on the backside of his
I prefer that.
driver's
Or Maestro. It's okay. Well, actually, I mean, not to jump the gun here because you didn't ask me a question here, but yeah. I want to tell you a story. Could I just start right off with a story?
Yeah.
Dude, go for it.
So
no, it's a podcast. Please, no stories.
Yeah, we have a hard break in 30 seconds, Craig. So make it quick.
We were on tour in Vienna with the Pittsburgh Symphony, and I got together with and a number of the brass players in the section and myself got together, actually courtesy of Gerhard Meinl, the tuba maker. Mm-hmm. He arranged for a meeting of some of the players in the Vienna Philharmonic.
Nice.
And, we got together with Paul Halwax, who's one of the two tuba players in the Vienna Philharmonic, and had a very nice time. And we went out to lunch right around the corner from the Musikverein. Actually, it was around the corner from the Staatsoper, the opera house in Vienna.
Man, I'm glad you cleared that up.
And I just want you to be able to picture it in your mind. But so we go into this restaurant, very nice Italian restaurant, and walk in, and Paul is standing there sort of at the head of the group, and the wait staff, like, they drop everything they're doing and they rush over and sort of stand in a line in attention, at the entryway.
Whoa. And
the maitre d' runs over and comes over and he says, "Maestro, Maestro." And he's talking to the tuba player of the Vienna Philharmonic. "Maestro, right this way. We have your table ready." And he brings us all back to this special table. And every time that the waitstaff approached the table, they would always address him as Maestro. And they brought his plate of pasta and they sort of lay it in front of him on the table. "Here's your pasta, Maestro." And I was thinking, what is wrong with the United States? Why do I not get this kind of treatment when I go out for my burrito at Chipotle?
Permane Brothers doesn't address you as Maestro?
I haven't had that yet.
Olive Garden?
No.
You can get unlimited breadsticks and salad there.
So anyway,
pay them. I bet they'd call you Maestro.
We may or may not have a colleague whose name might rhyme with Jeff Connor, or a past colleague who was in an Italian restaurant in it was Spain, and I believe in Valencia, and tried to order French fries, and the chef / owner of this restaurant screamed at him and told him to get out.
Craig, you know Jeff from way back.
Yeah, I do.
Yep. He told him if he wanted French fries to go to McDonald's.
That's right. And then he was indignant, like, how dare he?
I love Jeff, and yet
restaurant.
that story fills me with joy. It really does. So, hey, do you have any good old Jeff Connor stories?
I don't. Jeff is he's such a fine, upstanding person. That's all I could say. No, Jeff was nice enough to ask me to fill in with the Boston Brass, before it was the Boston Brass. I mean, this was, back when it was a working group in Boston and around New England, and he was just getting it rolling. And I think I filled in for a handful of concerts when I was in graduate school in Boston. And so I got to know him at the time. But then, I mean, it's just a totally different animal now.
Right. There you have it. So we have 3 former members of Boston Brass on the podcast today.
Well, I wouldn't want to represent myself as a former member of the group.
Just do it.
I would not be.
Who does?
Oh, come on, man.
No, jokey joke.
That's not nice.
Jokey joke. So Craig and I, are you at home, Craig?
Yes.
So Craig and I are about 0.4 of a mile apart right now.
Yeah, there must be an easier way to do this.
Yeah. Well, we had Zach Smith on, and he was about 8 houses up from me. So this is slightly better or worse, depending on how you look at
it. You're welcome here anytime, Lance, as long as you call ahead and make a reservation.
Well, you have Palenka still, right?
Don't order fries.
Tell the Palenka story.
The Palenka story is another tour story. This is from Bucharest, Romania, and we were there we've been there twice now since I've been in the orchestra. And the first time we play at the end of the concert, I think we did Shostakovich Fifth Symphony, a lot of brass. And at the end of the concert, several guys from the local radio orchestra in Bucharest were waiting backstage to meet us and say hello and welcome us, and then took us out for a late night dinner. And halfway through the meal, the tuba player, Mihai, who's just one of the greatest guys, he sort of opens his jacket and pulls out this bottle, this big bottle. It was actually a Coke bottle, like a 2-liter Coke bottle, clear plastic bottle. But it's filled not with Coke. It's not Coca-Cola. It's clear, almost clear liquid. And he announces that this is called Palinka, which is sort of the national spirit of Romania, and that he has made it. He made this. He distilled this spirit in the hills of Transylvania,
Romanian moonshine.
It's Romanian moonshine, and his family has been doing it for it's plum. It's distilled plum wine.
Wow! So
his family has been doing this for generations. I forget how long he said in this farm up in the hills. He actually sent me a videotape once of the process. I mean, and it's in this rural farm. It's like this, this age-old equipment, this copper tubing, and you can hear the chickens in the background and everything. And
laying the plum.
He said they have like 300 acres of plum trees or something like that. And after you have the plum wine, then you distill that, and it's called Palinka. And it's fantastic. It's fantastic. And the beautiful thing is that he really likes to share this stuff. And we had a great time that night, but he wanted to make sure that we had some to take home. And he gave us just bottles and bottles of this stuff that we had to try to figure out how to get back in our luggage. And then I get an email from him like 2 months after I'd been back from this tour. And he says, I have a friend of mine is traveling in the United States, and he's going to make a delivery to your house. I need your address. So I get home from work, and there's a big cardboard box on my porch, and inside are 2 more of these Coke bottles.
Wow.
Filled, with, and one of them was made back, bottled in the year of his birth. So, and he's probably in his 40s. So like 40-year aged Palinka, which is, I'm telling you, really smooth, really good stuff.
Wow.
So
it's pretty serious stuff. I've had some Palinka at Craig's, and you have 3 or 4 of those and you'll throw rocks at your own house.
So putting me in your neighborhood when you were talking about how close he was, this has absolutely nothing to do with Craig, but I'm afraid that he maybe hasn't heard the story and he needs to. Lance, can you recount the story of you running with the speed limit sign out in front of your house?
Oh,
well, Craig knows that story.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we've already teased it.
Okay.
I bet he'll appreciate hearing it again because it's an all-timer.
Well, so it's a Monday night. And the weather was nice, and Hannah and I were thinking about taking the boys to go get tacos. And so the teenage boys were taking the length of time teenage boys take to do everything, which is glacial. And so we were standing out in front of the house, and there happened to be one of those signs that gives you a digital readout on how fast you're driving, because they're trying to get people to slow down. So I asked Hannah, hey, do you think if I ran at that, I could get it to trigger? And she said, don't do that.
That's the best part of the story.
And so I did it and got 12 miles an hour. And then just then my son, I thought, well, that's not so bad. My son came out, and he is a track phenom as a sophomore. And he just hauls ass at this thing and gets 17 miles an hour. And then Hannah's son, David, came out and ran at it and got 16 miles an hour. And I thought, well, certainly I cannot be outdone. So I have to try it again. And so I started running, and the inner dialogue was, my strategy was, I need to increase
your strategy.
Speed. I got to get the more reps, more turnover, right? So that's the plan. Evidently, this message, it went right from my head to my feet, and it skipped the torso because I was running as fast as I could, and there was a oh dear moment in my head when I realized that my feet were exceeding my ability for my torso to compensate for this. And I had flashes of funniest home videos because I've seen, it's like dudes who are running beyond their capacity to control it. And I'm in that category now. And so again, in this like split second, my working theory is that if I can roll, then this will mitigate any serious harm. And so I start to roll forward, and I'm not a small person. I landed square on my right shoulder, and then face plant, and then barrel roll. Glasses went flying, and actually, maybe it might have been Duncan did 18 miles, and David did 17 or 16, something like that. Regardless, so I stand up, and I just see shock on the three faces. And I know I have road rash, but I'm like in shock. Like I'm numb at this point. And so I look down, and I know that my eyebrow is bleeding, and I don't have glasses on. And so David finds my glasses, which were somehow intact. I still don't understand how that was possible. I start to assess the road rash, which was extensive. And then they had that look of, this is one of the most amazing, hilarious things I've ever seen, but he might have done serious injury to himself. So we got to hold it together. So then we all go inside to get me cleaned up. And that was the point at which I realized that something was terribly wrong, because I went to raise my right arm to wash off the road rash and had great difficulty in raising my right arm. That's not good. And so a trip to the ER and, physical therapy and a sling and painkillers.
How fast did you run?
I got to 17 miles an hour.
Wow.
I think David got,
wow.
David
So it was
and
worth
it was totally worth it. Whatever. I didn't get Duncan, whatever his number was. It was either 18 or 17. And then David and I tied at second place. So I thought, at least that. Well, and I was probably midair when I triggered it, but so don't do that, kids. And then actually for the next 3 days, we would hear at all times of the day and night, either hear or see people were doing this very thing. They would stop, like one point at midnight, we heard like a car of teenage girls like parked, and then they were all taking turns running at this thing. And finally I don't know what good it did. It did me no good, but it got a good story out of it. My shoulder's still not quite right. There's a bump on it. Now I've got a bit of a Quasimodo thing going.
See, Craig, if you had been over hanging out that night, you could have told him, you could have like teamed up with Hannah and been like, no.
Well, and actually we were talking with our neighbors across the street, and just before it happened, I said, hey, do you want to run at this thing? He said, no, I'd hurt myself. So now my purse never falls off of my right shoulder because there's a lump there that keeps the strap from sliding over it.
We should
Craig is just mildly entertained. Is the whole show like this, or
he's like, I find Lance's jackassery both entertaining and sad, and so it just kind of, it just depends on the moment. So
I teach with that guy. How is that possible?
We should probably talk to one of the best tuba players in the world about tuba, or we're going to get tuba emails. So okay. Craig, talk to us about tuba and about equipment and heavy valve caps and what mouthpiece you use and your preferred tonguing syllables and what you think the meaning of letter J in the Prelude to the Meistersinger is, just in terms of like a life level.
Oh, interesting. Well, I have an answer for that. I know you don't expect that, but
Go for it.
Oh, I want to hear that.
No, I want to hear it.
No, you asked a lot of questions there, and I'm going to take them one at a time. No, where's a good place to start? You want to talk about the tuba? I can talk about the tuba, but where do you want to start? What are we talking about
here? You tell me. What kind of tuba do you play on, Craig Knox?
Oh my goodness. Okay, that's what we're doing. Okay, no, that's good. That's good.
See, that was Gould did the same thing. He was like, we got like 48 minutes into the lesson. He's like, don't you guys want to ask me questions about the trumpet?
Okay. Well, you may know that I'm a Meinl Weston artist. I'm very fond of the Meinl Weston tubas. I am, and so I play on the 6450 handmade version of the Bear model tuba, C tuba, almost all the time in the orchestra. That's my main axe in the orchestra, and I love the 2250 F tuba. That's a piston valve F tuba that I love.
Sounds dirty when you're talking about it. It's a piston valve tuba.
Yeah.
Love.
You know what? Here's maybe more interesting is that I'm enjoying playing the B flat tuba fairly often, or as often as I can find an excuse to, which has fallen out of favor since the John Philip Sousa era in the United States, but is making a little bit of a comeback. Of course, that's what they use almost exclusively for big tubas in the orchestras in Germany and Austria and where a lot of the classical music that we play in the orchestra is from, and in Russia as well, back in the day. So, and then we've always been using in the modern era here orchestrally in the United States, we've been using C tubas, which in a lot of ways, makes a lot of sense because that's, it's still a big instrument. It's still, a low pitched instrument. But that's a lot more nimble to play, around on and with good clarity and good articulation. But the B flat tubas that they're making now are really improving, and there's a different sound that you get on a B flat tuba. It's just it's a little bit wider, it's a little bit less compact and less focused, a little bit sort of more omnipresent sound. Right. And it's really great. It's really changed my life for some of the repertoire, like Prokofiev symphonies and Prokofiev Romeo and Juliet, Rachmaninoff symphonies, Shostakovich symphonies, things like that, where, what it is it's the pieces where the tuba plays alone, not necessarily with the brass section, not necessarily as the low voice in a brass choir, but when it's playing with the string-based section, when it's playing with the low woodwinds, when it's playing with the French horns alone, in some of that repertoire I mentioned. A lot of times, even on a big C tuba like the Bear C tuba, you can really feel just sort of scrawny and left out there in the open all by yourself. And there's something about the sound and the way that the sound comes out of the B flat tuba. It's just sort of spreads around the entire stage and fills that space. And it's a really great new thing that I'm trying. So I've been playing that for, I don't know, 2 or 3, 4 years, and on some repertoire. So there's something.
Wow, that was I'm not used to content.
Yeah, that was good content. Should we wrap the interview?
Yeah. Golly.
I think Craig just peaked. Yeah, like 19 minutes into this conversation. So we should.
All right, let's stay with content. Craig, tell us about. Yeah. So I got to hear Craig premiere a fantastic new concerto by Jennifer Higdon.
Oh, I wish I could have been there
a couple of months ago. It was fantastic. Would you talk about how that came about and the origin of the piece and just sort of what that whole thing was about?
Sure. So the orchestra came to me a number of years ago, quite a few years ago, and asked if I would be interested in playing a concerto and if I would be interested in premiering a new piece, in having them commission a new concerto for me to play with the orchestra as part of that arrangement. And of course, I'm interested in that. So then the next step is to find a composer who's willing to do that, and that seems to be a good match. And we talked about all sorts of different people, and and I've worked with other composers before. I mean, one who comes to mind is my good friend Tony DiLorenzo, who writes so much brass music for many of our colleagues, and who wrote a sonata for me, a 3-movement piece for me before with piano. And so I really enjoy that process of talking to a composer about what is possible and what some cool ideas are for a new piece, and then bringing that to fruition. And one composer that came up who had worked a fair amount with the Pittsburgh Symphony, I think in 2005 or 6, was our composer of the year. We always each year we always have a living composer who's featured throughout the entire season, and we'll do 3, 4, maybe 5 of their pieces during the course of the season. And they're in Pittsburgh working with us on those pieces. Sometimes they write new pieces for us. And Jennifer Higdon is also somebody that I've known a long time because we were at school together. We studied at the Curtis Institute together at the same time. And I still see her periodically now because we're both on the faculty at this point at Curtis as well. So we sort of have this 30-year history. And she's also just, incredibly prolific right now. I mean, she's commissioned for works all over the world. She's been winning all these accolades. She won the Pulitzer Prize for her, I think it was for the violin concerto. She won a couple Grammys now for a couple other concertos, actually all these for concertos. So I thought she would be great when they brought up her name. And the process was that once she agreed to do it, the nice thing was that since I've known her and already sort of have a relationship, that we could start right off the bat with, we sat down and she wanted to hear about all the pieces that I thought she should listen to for her tuba that already exist. So I wrote a big list for her, and she listened. The thing is, she listened to all of it. She listened to all of them, all the standard repertoire, the Vaughan Williams, the John Williams, and all sorts of pieces in between. She said she bought 40 solo tuba CDs to listen to.
Good.
I don't know if that's possible.
That's a mental illness.
But she was really into it. She really did her homework, and then she had all sorts of questions about different instruments and the registers, and how fast can you tongue, and what kind of intervals, and this and that and the other thing, and she also wanted to know what pieces in the orchestral repertoire that I thought featured the tuba really well. Other big important composers who wrote really well for the instrument. And anyway, she did the composition on her own. I mean, I didn't try to get in the way of that, but she would from time to time, she'd send me little sketches of things that she was working on to see if it worked. And I sometimes would record them and send them back to her by email just for her to get a sense for how it was going to actually sound when I tried to play it. And anyway, it was great because and then as it got closer, once it was pretty much done, we got together in person and I played it through for her and she made some little tweaks to it. Really, actually, right up till about 2 weeks beforehand, she was sort of tweaking it. It was really fun. I have to say, it was really fun. And the cool thing for me was, I mean, you gotta, I was thinking about, what's the point of this whole thing? I mean, of course, it's fun for me. It gives me something interesting to do. But, most people, 99% of the people who are going to be in those concerts, listening in the audience, are never, will have never heard a tuba solo before. And on the one hand, part of the idea of a concerto, I think, is to just sort of showcase the instrument and to impress people by what you can do on the instrument. There's that aspect of it. But also, I mean, I really wanted to be a piece that was musically engaging and that showed how the instrument can be expressive and really sing a beautiful song, just as simple as that. So I was really pleased that, and she and I talked about that, and I was really pleased that I I think the heart of the piece, the bulk of the piece, is the second movement, the slow movement, which is a really beautiful, lyrical, expansive, sort of rhapsodic, slow movement. And so the response that I got from the audience first, I mean, they really seem to like it, and I've gotten a lot of comments from audience members since then, who really enjoyed the, not just hearing the tuba, but they really enjoyed the piece of music. So that's
they just went nuts. They went nuts for that. They were really, really excited about it. It was also fun to be there because it was sort of a who's. There must have been, however many people were there. About 27% of them were tuba players.
Right. Yeah, that's good.
It was really great, but it was just sort of fun to kind of watch the people who obviously knew about tuba and the people who didn't. And there was a lot of like, oh, I didn't know they could do,
Right. Yeah. Of course, that's pretty easy to get, that reaction. I mean, you don't have to do much to get that reaction from
the
someone.
The bar is so low that you can stub your toe on it.
Right. No, it was great. It was really great.
And then, so you did it twice that weekend, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then now, are there other performances scheduled that you know of, or are you going to be recording it? Or
there's another performance like happening right around the time of this podcast recording in Scotland, with the Royal Scottish National Orchestra, and John Whitener is the tuba soloist there. So that was one of the co-commissioning orchestras. And then the other co-commissioning body was the Curtis Institute. And one of these days we're having a really difficult time nailing down the performance date, but the idea is that there will be another performance with me and the student orchestra at Curtis in Philadelphia at some point.
Cool,
that's great.
And then Jennifer's already been getting inquiries from a lot of other places, so I'm sure it will be making the rounds.
Any plans to record it?
There are no plans to record it. It is all our PSO concerts are broadcast nationally on the radio, and those can all be heard, of course, streamed on the radio's website as well. And they do archive that entire broadcast season each year. So eventually, I don't think it's up yet, but it will be up on the WQED.org website for on-demand listening, as a matter of fact. So that's the closest thing we have at this point to a recording.
Link to WQED.org, and then.
So you said that you got two performances of it. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
that's right.
What was were there any differences in the two performances? I mean, from your side of the horn?
Yeah, there were. I mean, I've played solos before, and I've even played in front of the Pittsburgh Symphony before with, smaller, less intensely focused on me kind of situations. But I mean, this is really it's a difficult situation. For somebody who's used to playing in the back of the orchestra to be at the front of the orchestra, where it's usually like Yo-Yo Ma or Emmanuel Axe or Joshua Bell. There's a certain expectation for the quality of what's supposed to be emanating from that soloist's instrument, and so I was mindful of that, and I worked hard on preparing myself for that, but I knew that. That's a heavy burden to walk out on stage with. And of course, what you want to be doing is you really want to be celebrating and sharing the music itself. So I really tried to focus on that, and I really enjoyed the experience very much, and I think I handled it as well as I hoped. But to get to your question, I mean, the second performance was just easier. I mean, I was more at ease that second time around. It just gave me a little bit of room to go out and do that first one as the first time as a featured soloist on a subscription concert, and playing a brand new piece that I really wanted to represent well. I mean, I wanted to represent it for Jennifer. I wanted it to go well. Right. That first concert, there was just a lot of that, which also was very exciting. I mean, I think there was actually a little bit more excitement. The tempos, actually listening back to those two performances, the tempos were a little faster the first time. And I think, there was just a little more edge to it, in a good way. A little bit less, it was a little bit less accurate. I dropped a few notes here and there that the second time around, I was able to play more cleanly. But that's I think that was totally to be expected. And the second time I enjoyed it a little bit. I was able to luxuriate in the experience a little bit more.
So cool. Wow. What an opportunity.
Yeah, it was great.
And what was the reaction from your colleagues?
Well, I mean, to my face, it was very positive.
That's right.
Now we got real. It took us half an hour, but now we're there.
That's right.
I mean, people said they thought it was great.
So, hey, Lance, Lance, what did Jim Nova tell you he thought about Craig's performances?
We're going to have to mark this as explicit again if I do that.
Oh, goodness.
So talk about, you've mentioned Curtis now a few times. So how did it come about that you've started teaching there? It's only been a few years, right?
Yeah, it's been, I think, I just finished my 4th year teaching there, and, how in
the blazes do you do that? Because Pennsylvania is not a narrow
it's bigger
state,
than it needs to be.
And you're going from one end of it to the other.
Well, through the modern invention of air travel.
Wait, slow down. What?
Do you mean
so a dirigible?
Do you mean when you're hurtling? Do you mean when you're hurtling through the air when you're supposed to be running, or do you mean?
Oh yeah.
Do you mean through an airplane?
Yeah. No, I fly. It's a 40-minute flight.
How often?
The idea is roughly every 2 weeks. Maybe roughly 8 times a semester, and I stay. I often stay for a couple days at a time. So I get plenty of hours in there, and I love it because teaching at a school where you studied, has all sorts of special meaning. If you had a good experience, when you were a student there, which I did.
Yes, that's a good point.
But no, it means a lot to me. And working with some of my old colleagues, some of my old classmates who are now, there are a number of them who are on the faculty. And it's a great school. So I enjoy it.
This is, I don't know, I don't mean this as a gotcha question, but you also we teach together at Carnegie Mellon. And so are there differences of approach or vision that you perceive at the two schools, or is it basically the mission is the same?
That's a good question. I mean, I think there are definitely differences to some degree. I mean, both schools are performance schools, essentially conservatory programs. They're at Carnegie Mellon as well as at Curtis. The curriculum is for music performance, and they're both relatively small schools. I mean, Curtis is smaller. It's 160 students. So there's one tuba student. There are 4 trombone students. There's 6 horn students. And Carnegie Mellon is relatively small, but it's bigger than that.
250, something like that.
Yeah. So, they're similar in some of those ways, small and performance oriented. Carnegie Mellon, I mean, I think Curtis is sort of the quintessential conservatory of music. I mean, it's really focused on the mastering the old school approach of classical music performance, and it has an incredible legacy in that way. And Carnegie Mellon has that as part of its curriculum. But I mean, the interesting thing about Carnegie Mellon is it's part of this larger university that's really known. I mean, I don't need to tell you this, Lance, for technology innovation and development and education. And something that Carnegie Mellon is the School of Music is, tries to do, I feel, is tap into that and, sort of look for new angles and look for new ways that that music can be part of our world. And so that's something I think it's really unique about Carnegie Mellon. They have their distinct qualities as well.
Sure. I was looking to change direction, unless you're opposed to that.
Just
idea.
do it, man. Just
I
own it.
don't have any direction.
Okay.
So whatever.
Okay. Good. So, you have been a key part of brass quintet for
That's
a
where I
long
was gonna
time.
go.
Would you talk some about Center City?
Yes, Center City Brass Quintet. Yeah, I mean, this was a group. I mean, not to just circle right back to where we were a moment ago, but I mean, this is a group that started, that we founded as students at Curtis. 5 of us, obviously, all.
Well,
we're not that.
that answers my next
not
question.
that innovative. Yeah,
It'd be funny if there's 6 of you founded it and you immediately booted one of the people.
or just have 6 guys or girls in a brass group and call it a brass quintet and just see if anyone notices.
The number of times that we were asked by someone non-ironically in a lobby, how many people do you have in your brass quintet? Yeah. And that's after they just watched us. Yeah, it was. It makes you a little worried about the future.
Yeah. So anyway, we were all first-year students. We all came in the same year, so we're all 17, 18 years old, and we just put this together. So now this is before, really, most anywhere, but before it was commonplace for like every school of music in the world, to have a brass quintet program, a brass chamber music program. We basically, I mean, it was certainly not discouraged. I mean, there certainly had been brass groups, and we had a brass ensemble class, and we had brass repertoire class, and and there was chamber music that was done. But to establish a group and then sort of see it through, we basically did that on our own. It was the 5 of us, just sort of almost immediately gelled into this group that just sort of had, a certain, we found a sound together, and we sort of had a way of working together, and we had some aspirations musically for things we wanted to try and pull off, and we were all on the same page in that way. And so we just rehearsed constantly on our own. No one was telling us to do this. It wasn't for a class. We weren't getting credit for it. And we went to the teachers and said, we want some coachings, will you listen to us? And we had all sorts of people, not just the brass faculty, but all sorts of people on the faculty listen to us. And we went to the director of the school and we said, we would like to do some of these competitions. And so, I mean, I think one of the things about that group, this, looking back on it, is just that, we wanted it to happen, and we knew what we wanted out of it. And we found a way to sort of get it started and get it going. And then we really sort of maximized on that through the whole 4 years that we were there. And then we all graduated, and then we all went off. And, Richard King, our horn player, I mean, he got in the Cleveland Orchestra immediately, in fact, halfway through that last year at school. And, people just started. John DeLutis, our trombone player at the time, joined the San Francisco Symphony that year. So there wasn't any question about, are we going to keep this group together? It was just, no, everyone's off going to what they're going to do next for about a year or so, or maybe a year or two. And then we started to miss it. And so, we got on the phone long distance, and we talked to each other and said, well, why don't we get together just for old time's sake? And we got together in Cleveland, I think at Rich's house. And it was mainly just to get together and hang out. And we barbecued some chicken, and we played some badminton, and we went to an Indians game, and, played some golf and stuff like that. And then we thought, well, here we are all together. We may as well, play something. So we just put on a concert, like at the elementary school down the street, And then we would do that every year. For a couple of years, we would at least once a year, we'd get together and we would just put on a concert for anybody who happened to be around, free concert. And that's basically how we operated. And it's sort of still how we operate. It's just that at one point we got it in our heads that we would make a recording. And actually Sam Palafian was a big help with that. I called Sam and I told him we had this idea to do this. And he and I brainstormed about repertoire, like good standard brass quintet repertoire, but that really hadn't been recorded or not well or not in an easily accessible place. And so that's why, we did this first recording with like Malcolm Arnold and Ewald One and the Doll and, the Calvert Monterasian Hills and just like stuff that everybody plays, and everybody needs a recording of. And we got Sam to show up in Cleveland and he hooked us up with, engineers and producers from Telarc, that they had used for Empire Brass for years and years. And we made a recording. And then once that recording was out and we found a label to release it, then we started getting real calls for real concerts, and we were able to get management to take us on and book concerts for us. And so we started playing real concerts. But the thing is, we still were, very, very part-time. I mean, we had people literally across, our 5 guys were spread across the country. So, it was, and that's been the biggest, I guess it's the biggest problem for the group, but maybe also one of the great things about the group is that it's really hard to schedule anything for this group. But then on the other hand, when we do manage to do it and we get together, it is such a party, it's such a great time. I mean, both in terms of just old friends, but also musically, we're really into it. It's like it's really special for us. So it's sort of a cool thing.
Yeah, that's great. So how busy is the group right now?
Not very busy.
Just because of everything else that's going on. So.
Yeah. I mean, we have years that go by. I mean, what we do is every year, a certain time of year, we look over our schedules, and this is basically, symphony orchestra schedules. Tony DiLorenzo doesn't have a orchestral position, so he doesn't have to worry about that. He's got a lot of other stuff he's got to work around. But I mean, five full-time orchestra schedules, or 4 anyway. I mean, that's ridiculous to try to find time that that matches up. And there are years where we literally cannot find a single week that we could possibly all be in the same place at the same time. But with any luck, there's 1 or 2 weeks in a year. And so we've done all sorts of different things with that time. I mean, for a number of years, we were going to Japan every spring, and we were teaching at a festival and performing around Japan. But we've mostly just performed all over the U.S. Really, I haven't counted up how many different states we've been in, but all from coast to coast. And a lot of those places we play are on concert series at universities, and then we'll do master classes that are associated with that, and get to meet a lot of the brass students and faculty around all over the place. Just like you guys know the drill with this kind of thing. So
yeah, my sense of it was that you guys sort of picked up the mantle that Empire charted more than the Canadians, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, Empire was my, Sam was one of my first teachers. I think I met Sam when I was 15 and started studying with him at that point. And I grew up in Connecticut, so I was a little an hour away from Boston. And so I'd go up to Boston for lessons. I met him at Tanglewood, but I'd go up to Boston for lessons. And he just sort of gave me open access to the Empire Brass Quintet. This is back in the heyday of that group when, they were doing 250 concerts a year, and they just sounded incredible. And
what year was
met
that?
him in
Started
'83.
with him at Tanglewood.
So this was in the mid '80s, and just going, I would just go and listen. I would go to, Rolf's, barn in West Stockbridge, and just hang out and listen to them rehearse all day, and I mean, I could listen to them forever. I mean, there was so much incredible stuff coming out of that group. And so anyway, yeah, I mean, that for me anyway, the Empire Brass was just so meaningful in terms of sort of developing my own ideas about what brass music was or what it could be. Yeah. And and they did play,
Yeah.
I think every brass group, because we don't have Beethoven string quartets, we don't, it's just a different, it's coming from a different place, right? So there's some legitimate, if you want to call it like legit music, classical-ish music. But brass instruments are great with, pop, jazz, crossover, whatever. I mean, it's just the instruments are so well lent to that, and they're so familiar to the ear, from a big band or from a funk band or whatever. So there's just so much that you can do with that. And I think so. I mean, all brass groups, sort of find their niche there, where they're going to fall in that kind of scale. And Empire was really interesting too, because I mean, I used to go and hear them in Boston, and they would do recitals, and they would have they would have all sorts of new pieces that composers were writing for them. They'd do like a whole concert of premieres. Of course, they had Michael Tilson Thomas wrote Street Song for them. But other, more
which your recording of is ridiculous.
Oh, thanks.
That's great.
Yeah.
Some heady, sort of cerebral, intellectual, classical stuff. Daniel Pinkham, I remember, wrote a piece for them that I heard them premiere, and they would do a concert like that, and then they would go out to the Hatch Shell, in Boston, where the Boston Pops plays, and do a concert for 20,000 people of all American hits or whatever, American patriotic music, and I mean they could do all of it. So I think and we like to do that in Center City too. I mean, we like to represent, especially when we're doing concerts at universities where we're working with students. We like to play some of that standard rep that we know they're working on, that we know that they're trying to figure out, and it would be great for them to hear. But so we'll do some of that on the first half maybe, and then we love to do this stuff that we really utilize Tony's arranging skills, Tony DiLorenzo, for him to do stuff from Leonard Bernstein or George Gershwin or Kurt Weill, and and then the stuff that he writes that's really cutting edge, cool stuff. So we try to sort of have a range as well, but but we're not playing together enough to put together a show like the way Boston Brass can put on a show, or Nosal Brass, and like have a start to finish memorized show, that just starts to just takes the audience through this progression, seamlessly, from beginning to end of the show. It's just not who we are, and it's not something we can't do that. We have like a day and a half of rehearsal after a year off,
But I think it's so cool that you guys can that you do play, well, obviously individually, but together at such a high level, and that the recordings are so incredible, and that it's not a full-time thing, that it's not even close to a full-time thing, and that it's not anything that anybody wants to turn into a full-time thing. I mean, I just think that it's great that I think that we are all kind of raised, whether it's actually how we're raised or we perceive it that way, where you're like, you got to be all in or you're not, right? Mm-hmm. And the fact that you guys are all in when you're doing that, but it's like that doesn't sound like there's any judgment or shoulds from any of you guys. Like, well, we should be playing 3 weeks a year, and it's like, well, you play how much you play, and I'm sure you all seem to really enjoy each other's company musically and otherwise, so I'm sure you'd love it if you could carve out 3 to 4 weeks a year. But it is where it is, and to be able to still do it at that level with that little ramp up is really impressive.
Yeah, well, thanks. I mean, I hope we can keep doing it. It really is a challenge logistically, but by the end of the week, we're always saying, well, what can we do next time? Let's look at our calendars. Let's when's the next time we can get together? And it always also sounds a lot better by the end of the week too. I mean, we're just like more excited about it by the end of the week. But
geez, bands that travel half the year sound better at the end of the week than
Right.
So yeah, it doesn't matter. Boy, hearing your man, I was basically your clone in a lot of ways, but just after you. Mm-hmm. It's kind of surreal.
With
like
Sam.
I started studying with Sam at 14 at Tanglewood in 1990, and I also studied looking at your bio with Gary Ofenlock and with Chester Schmitz.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like it's really kind of and just the countless hours of listening to Empire and the Berkshires and all that, and it's it's kind of crazy actually reading it. It's like you lifted some of that from my bio. So except for the being a tuba player in one of the world's best orchestras part. So I was thinking about lifting that part from yours, but I think people might notice. Wait, you're the tuba player in the Pittsburgh? I thought is that not Craig Knox anymore? No, it is.
It was just easier to use his bio.
Somebody noticed. Yeah, exactly. You should have at least changed the picture, Hitz. Yeah, you guys. Oh, goodness.
Hey, feel free to dodge this question, but how are things going in the PSO now that you guys are, back in action for, a pretty good amount of time now? I mean, it was a bumpy road not that long ago. And is the band happy? Are things going well with the management and the
so you're referring to
there?
We were on strike for I think 60 days. I should know exactly how many days, roughly, several months. 2 seasons ago, and that was really rough. That's really rough. And but the orchestra sounds great, and the orchestra is running full steam right now. Classical music is challenged. It always has been. It always has been. I mean, it's always in the way that we have it set up in the United States, where there's essentially no government support. It's all basically privately raised money. We basically exist, due to the largesse of, the people in the community who want to have a symphony orchestra. And then, the question is always, what does it take to make that happen? And our message throughout has been that, look, the Pittsburgh Symphony has been, one of the great American orchestras for generations, for over 100 years. And that's not something that just sort of falls into place overnight. There is like this legacy that's built, and we have an incredible history of the music directors that we've had here, going back to Fritz Reiner was here before he was in Chicago, and William Steinberg and Andre Previn and Lauren Mazel before he was in New York, and Maris Janssens before he's at Concertgebouw, and now Manfred Honeck. And you look at the lineup of the musicians who are in the orchestra, and so somebody comes in the orchestra as a new 25-year-old violin player, and they might be sitting to somebody who's been in the orchestra for 40 years, and who was hired 3 music directors ago, and there's like this lineage that goes all the way back to Fritz Reiner and before. Mm-hmm. And that is so much the essence of what makes the orchestra great. It's not just hiring a bunch of good musicians, from there are plenty of good musicians at any time coming out of conservatories, and you can put 100 of them on a stage and have them play a piece of music. But there's a tradition of sound. There's a tradition of just a certain attitude and an expectation of excellence, and the way that we play together, and the way that we, respond to what the conductor is doing, and the way that we know how to play in this hall. And that's, I mean, when you get a really great orchestra, those things they're hard to put your finger on and point to, but they so much, affect the special quality of what comes out for the audience to hear. And I think our point is that that's something that can't be taken for granted. And what is so important is to renew that level of playing and level of musicianship and level of excellence, every time we have an opening in the orchestra, because that is going to be part of the legacy for the next 40 years. And that's, so it's crucial that we're always able to get, to attract and keep the musicians who are going to add to that and keep that going strong. And we've had several hires, since key hires since that strike. And I think artistically things are going. I think everyone's really happy with how things are going.
I mean, it just the group sounds fantastic, and I didn't, like I said, I wasn't looking for a gotcha. And actually, what was curious, why I was curious was because I was fortunate enough to get to play with your group. Mm-hmm. A month ago or so on the Janacek.
Yeah.
And I think I'm decent at reading a room, and it didn't seem like I've worked in not fun environments and the room didn't have that vibe. Not that I'm sure there's, every time you get a group of people together, there's trouble, but it didn't seem like a group of really miserable, unhappy people.
Yeah, no, it's a cool group. It's a really cool group in that way. And there was a period of time in my career where I was playing with, big orchestras all across the country, just, for a week here, a week there, just as a substitute. And, half dozen at least other major orchestras in the US. And so, it's cool how you get to a sense for, the feel of the ensemble, and the way and the sound that they have, and just sort of the way that they go about, playing a piece of music. And I mean, the first time I played with this orchestra, it was electric. I mean, just the energy level in terms of the output, is just, I had never experienced, all those other places I played, never experienced anything like that. And there's like this kind of, commitment to the music above all else. And look, they're great musicians and great. I don't mean to imply anything other, for any other orchestra, but there's just, and maybe it's just something that fits, that's a good fit for me, but just something about the way that this orchestra just, attacks a piece of music. And it's like, it's sort of, I feel like it doesn't matter what the situation is, it's always, that's how we roll no matter what, so, and it's just, there's a certain, I don't think there's a whole lot of ego attitude that gets pushed around. So that makes it easy to really enjoy the music making too.
Sounds like a fun place to work.
It is.
That's great.
It really is.
So we need to ask you about our dear friend Jens Lindemann, because we are just about out of time here. So as you may or may not know, the Canadian national treasure that is known as Jens Lindemann, who is featured on the Canadian $10 bill, according to Tom McCaslin, which may or may not be true. He's been going through some job problems of late.
Job problems, I heard that, yeah.
Yeah, and so what advice might you have for him from someone that's accomplished so much as a soloist, a chamber musician, and an orchestral musician, and a teaching profession? You're basically at the top of all of it. So I'm hoping that you can provide him maybe the ultimate insight that can finally get him over the hump. So what do you got?
Well, I have found, and something that I've tried to, something that I have done, actually, was Sam Palafian, was the mentor of mine at the time, who got me started really trying to take good care of myself physically, and really focusing on the cardiovascular, in order to, have good breathing and, good free moving air column and all that. And so he started me out running when I was 15, and I've been a runner ever since. And so I think I would advise Jens to, if he's not already running, I think he should be, running regularly. But I mean, what you want to do is, you want to be running at your maximum speed at all times. And so, what you could do is if you can get some kind of a radar gun that can monitor your speed, you want to be right around the 17, 18 miles an hour mark. And if you can maintain that for about 2 miles, and to make it a little easier, like downhill sometimes helps if you can find a big hill. I would say that's really that's gonna make a big difference in his playing.
That's brilliant.
Should he wear a helmet?
I don't think it's necessary.
So I just had a flashback to the summer of 1994 when I was at my family's summer house and had been partying with some of the people on the that were on the kitchen staff at BUTI, and so we had to get them back before breakfast starts, like being cooked. So we're like, it's like 5:30 in the morning. We're running a little late, so we're like tearing through. My family's house is about 20 minutes from Tanglewood, so we're tearing through the back streets of Lee, like barreling through the empty streets, trying to get them back on time. And who do we see running on the side of the road but Mr. J. Samuel Palafian is out jogging, right? And so so what did I do as his as his student? I was working for him that summer as well, helping him. That was the summer he moved to Arizona.
Wow.
Like he started at ASU the following that August, and he was working as the orchestra manager at BUTI. So anyway, I had everybody roll down all of their windows, and then we were completely quiet. And then right as we got up behind him, this is a station wagon going like 60 miles an hour on this backcountry road. Everybody screamed at one time, and he almost had a heart attack.
Oh my God.
And looking in the rearview mirror, I saw him doubled over, and he was laughing his ass off because he couldn't believe
so funny.
how crazy we were. Yep. So
I've got that brings to mind 2 Sam stories, if I may.
Yeah. Yes. Should we say, let's do one of them and then save one for the bonus episode? How's that?
I don't know.
Or are they both?
I don't know. It's just, I don't know if the second one is long enough. Anyway.
Go for it.
Where do you want to put it? We can wait.
Right now.
Okay.
Yeah, right now.
Where do you want to put it?
Well, the first is just that the very, very first time I ever met Sam. So I'm a student at the Boston University Tanglewood Institute in the Young Artists Orchestra, right, in 1983. And at the time, anyway, part of the deal was you got lessons with faculty, and so I had this scheduled lesson. It was in the evening. I remember because it was after dinner, and then I'm waiting outside on the grounds, outside of the big house there on the grounds. I'm supposed to just meet him at 7:00 or something, and I'm pacing around waiting for him. I'm really excited about meeting him and having this lesson that we're going to have. And it's 7, it's 7:15, it's 7:20, it's 7:30. Now it's like 8:00, and I'm starting to wonder, well, I guess maybe he's just a no-show. And of course, this is before cell phones. There's no email. There's no way to try to reach him, and I was about to give up, and now it's like 8:20, and I figure, well, I guess this isn't going to happen. Hopefully there must be some mix-up. And then I look down the long gravel driveway, to the grounds, and turning the curve off of the road onto the driveway on a bicycle with a tuba and on a backpack on his back is Sam. And he's like balancing this bike with this tuba on his back, sort of like a clown at the circus going on a tightrope on a bicycle kind of thing. It's really teetery, but he's really slow. He's just sort of barely turning these wheels. And then he sort of comes up to a stop and he says, my car wouldn't start. And, I tried to get it started. And so, but I looking back on that, I would never do that for a student. Are you kidding me? My car doesn't start. The lesson's canceled.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm covered. I am morally covered.
He puts the tuba on his back and he bicycles through the Berkshire Mountains to have this lesson. I couldn't believe it. And then, okay. The other one is that. So
go for it.
At the end of that lesson, so that's my first lesson, and it was such a great lesson. It was, it was, as he would say, it was atomic. It was just like, and I was so excited, and he was all, getting me all riled up. And this is when he sat me down and he was like, okay, here's a plan. He's like, you're going to be a tuba player. You can do this. So here's the plan. And he like lays out an entire plan for the rest of my life, basically. So starting with buzzing the mouthpiece, but finishing with, okay, here's how you have to live your life, how you have to take care of yourself. So one is you're going to start running today. And in fact, at the end of that lesson, no, it couldn't have been at the end of that lesson. It must have been in another lesson because he had his car. But he put me in his car and he drove me around and we found like a 3-mile loop, and he said, okay, here's your 3-mile loop. And you're going to run an 8-minute mile every day. You're doing this. Okay. So, but there were other things too. He said, okay, you're going to do that. You're going to go running every day and and he said, and no sugar, no caffeine. He didn't bother to say no drinking or no smoking because I was like, too young and squeaky clean. He could tell that wasn't going to, be a problem. But so I was like, yes, this is what I'm doing. I'm a tuba player. And I did, I started the next day I was running, and I have been running ever since. But also like with the caffeine, like I wouldn't drink coffee. I wouldn't drink Coca-Cola, like soda of any. Again, I did notice that if I ever did try, especially after having given up caffeine, it would make me really jittery, and so I to this day I don't use caffeine at all.
Wow.
And
wow.
And then so
what about Palenka?
He didn't say anything about Palenka.
I hope fermented plums that still doesn't have caffeine, because if it does, I'm over that crap.
But here's what's so funny is years and years later. I mean, I don't know how many years later. It's probably 20 years later. We're on it's maybe he's doing some session with recordings. Maybe it was when he was doing the work with the Center City. And I walk into the room. He's sitting, and he's got a Coke. He's got a can of Coke in his hand. And he's Coke. Drinking this thing. I'm like, Sam,
always.
Sam, what's that? What are you doing? And he's like, what? And I said, when I was 14 years old, you told me if I wanted to be a tuba player, no caffeine. And he listened to me say that, and he looked at me and he said, oh, you mean you did that?
I Gucci.
I Gucci. Oh man!
Wow,
we should tell that one. I don't know if we can tell that one on the. That's quality right there. Yeah. Oh, you did that.
You mean
thank God he was over all that crap by the time 1990 rolled around. He did.
Do as I say, not as I do, man.
Hey kid, go pick me up a 6-pack, but and run there, and don't have any sugar. Yeah,
run.
Yeah.
Oh goodness, Sam is a national treasure. So there you go. Well, Craig, this has been awfully fun.
Awfully fun was it?
What?
I wondered if you were going to pick up on that.
Oh, good.
No, it's been terribly fun. Horribly fun. Yep. It's been disgusting.
In retrospect, I had more fun talking to you than the guys that were at the top of our list. So, I mean, it's really been.
I threw that on them yesterday. We had juries at CMU. I walked out. Hey, it was great. I would rather work with you guys than the best guys.
That's a good line. That line works everywhere. So, yep. So, all right. Well, stick around, Craig. We're going to have a brief bonus episode with you here, and then we'll let you go. So, thank you so much for your time, and that is going to do it for this episode of the Brass Junkies. You've been listening to The Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to hear the bonus episode featuring today's guest, please visit patreon.com/thebrassjunkies to learn how you can support the show and instantly access all bonus materials, as well as gain access to a special patron-only Facebook group. The Brass Junkies is produced by the amazing, wonderful, and truly inspirational Will Houchin. The theme music was composed by Fernando Dados and performed by Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. We are at Pray for Jens on Twitter and Instagram, and have a Facebook page at facebook.com/prayforjens. You can find out more about the Brass Junkies and all the other Pedal Note Media podcasts at pedalnotemedia.com. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network.